Anyone tell me where this comes from? Take a guess.
Sarajevo.
Sarajevo. Anywhere else?
Detroit.
Detroit, thank you very much. This is the Packard plant, built in 1912 by Albert Kahn, a 40-acre site. The first time that reinforced concrete was ever used in the construction of a building. And today, it is a monument of what happens when actually you build things that cannot adapt to a world around you. Detroit, there's a great film actually that the BBC made called Requiem for Detroit. A city built for 2 million people with under 800,000 people now living in that place. Now, there's a guy called John J. Burton Rogers. Jay's grandfather ran the Indian Motorcycle Company for a number of years. And Jay said, and he grew up in Flint, Michigan, very important to the story of this. So he grew up around cars, he grew up in that big industrial environment. And Jay said, my grandfather gave me the disease, the love of all things on 2 and 4 wheels with an engine in them. Jay was actually in the Marine Corps for 8 years, and he did that after leaving Princeton because he was very unhappy with the way that he was being educated and being asked to think about engineering and design. So he joined the Marine Corps, was a company commander, left that, and really started to think about what his passion was and what things meant to him. And he felt, you know, I've got this disease, and it's a thing called cars, it's got engines in it. But the way that we are doing stuff doesn't make sense. In Britain, we have an overcapacity of 30% of automotive engineering. I mean, that's extraordinary. 30% of people's time, if you were told that for the next 20 years of your life, 30% of your life was going to be wasted, that's an extraordinary wastage. Time, materials, costs, all of these things. So Jay said, we've got to have a completely different way of how we create great products for cars. And this is the challenge that I set myself. So he set up a company called Local Motors. And they put online design competitions. They wrote very specific briefs about specific vehicles that had to do specific things in different types of environments. And anyone could come along if they were interested, if they could fulfill the criteria of the design competition, and then the community voted on those designs. Now, it is called a community of practice. It's very interesting in terms of, up here, how they've actually created a true community and how that community is actually going to work and operate and function together. Yes, there are people in the United States, there are people in Australia, Romania, the Netherlands. In fact, actually, Jay says there's not really a country on this planet, more or less, that at least one person is not involved with the local motors community in terms of designing and engineering innovation. This is the first car. It's called the Rally Fighter. And in fact, a young guy did the sort of main styling for the vehicle, and the community voted that this was absolutely the best design. Now, the interesting thing is, at the time, there wasn't money in the competition. This little thing here is actually where the guy's name is who actually designed that vehicle. So every vehicle that is built has his name as the designer on the outside of that car. Why is he doing this? Because actually he's truly motivated, because he's passionate about vehicle design and manufacture. It was, you know, Doc Searls that said markets are conversations. He said that 10 years ago. Jonathan Schwartz, the COO of Sun Microsystems, said my 1,000 bloggers at Sun have done more for this company than $1 billion ad campaign ever could have done. Because you get a window into this organisation that is completely different. And so, of course, we have to have a conversation of kind of context to the companies. There's a lot of conversation going on. There's a lot of information being shared in real time, which is extremely important. And they get people to come together face to face. So they have burgers, welding and car days where petrol heads can come together and actually sort of get the bonnets up and do stuff, get their hands dirty and all the rest of it. And actually here's Jay and the back here, looking on at some of his welding expertise. Now, of course, all of that is filmed and recorded, and it goes up on Facebook, because that's what you do, right? And you're sharing that knowledge and information. Now the interesting thing is that when you buy a Local Motors car, you have to be part of the build process. It doesn't matter whether you have a PhD in engineering design or whether you've never changed a wing nut in your life. You're going to get in that factory, you're going to roll your sleeves up and you're going to build that car. Now the reason why you're going to build that car is, in fact, the research shows that if you do that, you bond with that vehicle. And you are 80% less likely to default on your down payments on that car as a consequence of that. So, you know, this is extremely important. But it's now your car. You own it. It's completely different to going onto a dealership lot and just buying a GM car or a Chrysler or kind of whatever. You have bonded with it. Now, what are the lessons that I take out of Local Motors? Well, by understanding the problem as a real design problem, from start to finish, you can change the relationship of supply and demand from conception to production, and to see it as a system that needs to be evolved and changed, rather than looking at one tiny aspect of something where in the whole is a real problem. There's actually a Toyota plant that has been built recently, which looks a little bit, well, not quite as sort of falling down as the Packard plant, because it's actually brand new. But in terms of its thinking, it's exactly the same thinking. So it carries the same inherent problems and DNA of what happens when that economy changes once again. But by working with a distributed knowledge network, both hyper-local, so that's people coming face to face, and super global, communities of practice, online, working together, means that a great deal of value is created by bringing those two things together. It's not one nor the other. And that, in fact, actually all their data that they create is available online for other people to use. Now, Jay says that, in fact, when they started, lots of the big car companies weren't really interested in what they were doing. But when they started to see how they were working, they were very interested. And they said to Jay, we'd love you to come and tell us how you do it. He said, I'd love to do that. I'll come and do that. I'll come and speak to anyone. But whatever I share with you and you share with me, we share with the rest of the world. And they went, I don't think I want to do that. Really interesting. A lot of friction in terms of how companies see IP and how IP, in understanding how that really works, can really drive the speed of innovation in many ways. 44,000 designers in 1 year and 3,600 engineering innovators collaborated around the first vehicle. That's an extraordinary amount of creative thinking, energy, knowledge that is applied as a consequence of that. It was Peter Drucker actually said there are no conscripts, there are only volunteers in the network world, and I think this is a really important thing about how you're going to attract those people. And this is really interesting. They can build cars 5 times quicker at 100 times less the capital cost. That is a serious piece of innovation, and that really inspires me. And that is why the big car companies want to talk to Jay and understand how he's understood how you can think about the entire automotive industry in a very different type of way. He doesn't want to build a Packard plant, he doesn't want to build a new Toyota plant, he wants to build micro factories because it's local motors, local people, local jobs, where although they're creating an overall blueprint, they can allow money to flow into local communities and provide that stability to those communities in a completely different way. And because, in fact, they are in this constant dialogue with so many people, not just from Local Motors to the community, but the community talking to each other, they are, in fact, the learning organisation. Learning in this world is not a nice to have. Learning is absolutely an imperative of survival. I actually started off training as a typographer many, many years ago. And actually, I was taught of how to do that in a very traditional way. 2 or 3 years after I left college, I got a job, I went to work, and there was a little Apple Classic Macintosh for me to use. And that industry, a particular part of the publishing industry, died overnight as a consequence of that. And I realised that if I wasn't part of constantly upgrading myself, or constantly being in beta, then I possibly could be on the scrap heap because I didn't have the skills to offer to a world that had changed around me.